Today, we're diving into a really powerful chapter from the prophet Jeremiah. It asks a question that is frankly a little terrifying. What happens when a nation's choices, a person's choices, become irreversible? We're going to see how Jeremiah 17 lays out the history-shaping consequences of one single decision, where we choose to place our trust. I mean, really think about that question for a second. What happens when the mistakes are so deep they just can't be fixed? This is the heavy question that hangs over this entire chapter. Jeremiah isn't just describing a nation in crisis, he's diagnosing a condition that's so deep-seated it seems beyond repair. Let's see how he does it. Okay, so to get what's going on, we have to picture the scene. It's the late 7th century BC, and these are the last desperate days of the Kingdom of Judah. You can see on the timeline, Jeremiah's career lines up perfectly with the rise of the terrifying Babylonian Empire. Judah's leaders are stuck in this massive geopolitical storm, and they're desperately trying to make alliances to save themselves. But as we're about to see, they are looking in all the wrong places. So Jeremiah doesn't ease into it. Nope. The chapter opens like a gavel slamming down in a courtroom. It's not a gentle warning, it's a formal indictment. He's laying out the diagnosis for a spiritual sickness that has infected the very heart of the nation. In verse 1, the imagery is just chilling. Judah's sin isn't written in ink that you can wash away. It's permanently engraved with an iron stylus tipped with a diamond point. I mean, these were the tools you used for the most permanent inscriptions you could possibly make. The message is terrifyingly clear. This isn't a mistake that can be erased. It's final. So where exactly is this sin engraved? Well, Jeremiah points to two places, and they're both devastating. First, it's on the table of their heart, which means their inner character, their very desires are corrupt. But then, it's also on the horns of your altars, the most sacred part of the place you go for forgiveness. The very system designed to cleanse sin is now permanently stained by it. There's no escape. Verse 2 shows us how this all happened, how the rot got so deep. The sin has become an inherited tradition. The children are growing up remembering the pagan altars, and the groves, that's a reference to the Asherah poles used in fertility worship, they remember those things the same way they should have been remembering God's law. You see, this isn't a simple case of people just not knowing any better. This is way past that. It's now an issue of deep cultural formation. An entire generation is being raised to think that idolatry is normal, taught by the very example of their parents. It's a tragic reversal.
Okay, so when a sin is this permanent, this deeply embedded, well, you can bet the consequences are going to be just as severe. The next part of the chapter details the national price for this rebellion.
In verse 3, God speaks to my mountain in the field, which is a poetic name for Jerusalem. And he declares that the nation's wealth, all its treasures, are going to be plundered. And this is not just a threat. It is exactly what happened when Babylon came and sacked the city, first in 597 BC, and then completely in 586 BC. But verse 4, this one is a real gut punch. To discontinue from thine heritage means to lose the promised land itself, the inheritance God gave to Abraham centuries before. They're going to be ripped from their home and forced to serve their enemies, the Babylonians, in a foreign land. Now, this is a really critical point to get. The exile wasn't just some random tragedy or bad luck. The text presents it as covenant enforcement. Basically, it's the direct contractual consequence of breaking their sacred agreement with God, a consequence they had been warned about for centuries in texts like Deuteronomy. And right here, the chapter makes this amazing pivot. It shifts from this specific national prophecy to a timeless piece of wisdom. It presents two fundamental paths for life, and each one is defined by where you put your trust. First up, we see the path of the cursed man. Verse 5 is incredibly blunt. Cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm. This was a direct shot at Judah's political strategy. They kept turning to the military might of Egypt for protection against Babylon, relying on human strength, on flesh, instead of on God. In Jeremiah's eyes, this isn't just a bad strategy, it's a deep spiritual betrayal. So what's the result of that kind of trust? Verse 6 gives us this stark, sad image. A person like that is like a heath in the desert, a stunted, fruitless little desert shrub. It's alive, sure, but it's barely surviving. It's a picture of a life without any real vitality. And get this, Even when good things happen, like rain falling just over the next hill, it's so isolated and barren that it can't even benefit. But then, just when it seems hopeless, Jeremiah presents the powerful contrast. He flips the script and shows us the other path, the life that results from placing trust where it actually belongs. Verse 7 states it so simply: "Blessed is the man that trusteth in the Lord." Now, notice this blessing isn't about having perfect circumstances or an easy life. It's relational. The blessing comes from having your confidence, your reliance, your hope fundamentally pointed toward God. And the image for this life in verse 8 is just beautiful. It's a tree planted by the water. Now, the point isn't that this tree avoids the heat. It doesn't get to skip the drought. The point is that its deep roots connect it to a life-giving source that never runs dry. So no matter how bad the conditions get on the surface, it stays green, it stays fruitful, it weathers the storm. So there you have it. Jeremiah presents these two starkly different outcomes. Trusting in human strength, in flesh, it leads to a barren, fruitless existence, like that shrub in the desert. But trusting in God, that leads to a stable, fruitful life that can withstand anything. Ultimately, when you boil it all down, the entire passage comes back to this one powerful idea. For a nation, and for each one of us, what's engraved on the heart, where our trust is truly placed, is what ultimately shapes our destiny. It shapes our history. And that leaves us with a piercing question, doesn't it? We all face years of drought, those times of pressure, of hardship, of uncertainty. The question Jeremiah leaves ringing in our ears is this: when that heat comes, where are your roots planted?